My name is Chris Gavaler. I'm an associate professor at Washington and Lee University. I'm also a series editor for Bloomsbury Comic Studies Critical Guides and a comics editor for Shenandoah Magazine. Oh, and my most recent book is The Comics Forum, and the work that Monalesia and I are working on together, for me, comes out of the formal analysis that I started in that book.
Okay, and can you hear me all right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so I'm Monalesia Earle, and I'm an independent researcher based in the UK, in the Northeast, so in Durham, if you're familiar at all with the UK. And we'll talk about this a bit later, but doing this project with Chris has been absolutely amazing. I learned so much from Chris, so I really got drawn into, Matt Baker, and I'll say I hadn't actually heard of Matt Baker before Chris approached me to collaborate on this project. And we'll talk a bit about this again about misdirection. So my book, Writing Queer Women of Color, Representation and Misdirection in Contemporary Fiction and Graphic Narratives, really just drills down into that idea of misdirection. So again, I was really thrilled to partner with Chris on doing that a bit earlier. So the question that we wanted to answer was, how did Matt Baker's what I call visible invisibility, as well as his astute application of misdirection. Now, certainly, I don't think he consciously thought about misdirection, but I think on a real deep subconscious level, he knew exactly where he was taking the direction of his thoughts. So we want to look at his astute application of misdirection in his drawings in particular, and how they support any understanding that he may have had personally about his marginality as a Black man and what was at that particular time that he worked and lived in, a country that gazed on Black bodies with hostile intent. And was this understanding that he may have consciously had inserted into his work as an implicit counter-narrative to the ever-present threat of violence that Black people face. And Chris, you brought up something earlier when we spoke about the counter narrative with respect to his presumed.
Yeah, we can't know for sure Baker's sexuality, but there is at least fair amount of evidence to suggest that he was gay. So there's a double layer. He's both Black and most likely gay, and so his positionality within the comics medium, the comics industry, is doubled that way. It's interesting, like the image, Qiana, that you put forward here, classic Baker drawing of Phantom Lady. He is best known for these sexualized images of white women.
That's right.
He didn't pass as white. However, no one who bought these comics knew that they were drawn by a Black man or a gay Black man, whichever it might have been. So it was all done under pseudonyms, so no one had any idea about that. So there was a level in which he's hiding behind these images, not hiding, he's drawing them, his employers know everything about him. Sure. But it's still an interesting layer because the readers, who I think we can presume are straight white boys, are completely unaware of the positionality of the artist. And we found that particularly interesting to dive into.
Yeah, and I think there's a theme behind that, Qiana, in that the dangerous times in which Black people lived, by necessity, there was that subtext, that actually subtext in the pushback, and misdirection is the pushback.
Baker's known for its drawing, his rendering of women, erotic rendering of women. I look at that somewhat, but really what I'm most interested in is his layouts, which I think are, I like his rendering style fine, but I think his layouts are absolutely fascinating and deserve far more attention than they've received in comic studies. So the primary thing that I was looking at, most comics, contemporary comics are either in a Z path which is the way we read English prose, or sometimes an empath when columns are created. And Neil Cohn, for example, has figured out the sort of what he calls reading protocols. I would call them viewing paths for figuring out the ordering of panels. And Baker, obviously fully aware of the Z path, what he seems to be doing is quite intentionally, of course, can't get into his head, but I think it's intentional, playing against the expectation, knowing that the viewer is going to default to a Z path. And he disrupts that again and again and again in really interesting ways, in ways that are just not common in comics generally. Even in this period of the 1950s, which is sometimes called a Baroque style of layout. And so one of the first things I did was figure out the kinds of disruptions or misdirections that I had not encountered really any of them before, that he is, I think, is a pioneer of. I've since seen them scattered here and there, but nowhere to the level of density per page that I found with Phantom Lady.
I also felt that working with Chris and how he explained the different viewing paths sat really right in the center of what I think misdirection means. And as you know, I've made up my own definition of where I've extended the classic definition of what misdirection is. And I think it fits really quite well with what the images that Chris put together on the paths. And so that definition comes into all sorts of post-colonial sort of things as well. But it's a signifying strategy, and Gates talks about this, but it's a signifying strategy which is defined by the context through which it seeks to affect perceptual shifts. That's what Matt Baker did, and that's what Chris did. So whatever that context is, misdirection signifies it. Okay, so it's that strategizing to affect our perceptual shifts. And Nicholas talked about that as well. What was Harriman trying to get our gaze to do? What were Chris and I trying to flesh out about Matt Baker that talks about his signifying strategy and the perceptual shifts, which he did brilliantly, that he created in the viewing paths.